New Year comes with a lot of new things, and for this year, it came with a lot of new PC hardware. And for a nerd like us, it's like a year-long Christmas. But with all these new releases, there is a big question that is hanging on our shoulder. So today in this video, let's discuss this. Should we build a new PC or should we upgrade it? Because there are a lot of variables to properly answer this question. I should talk to every one of you watching this video personally, but that is not very efficient. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through every single component inside a PC and I'm going to discuss in which situation you should upgrade that said component or just build a new PC. First, let's start with the CPU. For a lot of people, upgrading a CPU can be as simple as a drop-in part. But at the same time, for a lot of people, upgrading a CPU can very well mean upgrading to a completely new platform. But before you even think about upgrading your CPU, first you have to identify, do you really need to upgrade your CPU or not? And how will you know that? Well, first, if your PC is more than 10 years old, then it's the first indication that you should upgrade your CPU. Heck, build a new PC unless you just do some light web browsing and occasional text editing or Excel work. But if you are a gamer or you do CPU intensive tasks and you also have relatively modern hardware, then you might need to dig a little deeper. What I want you to do, download Hardware Info 64 for monitoring your CPU stems and clock speed, and MSI Afterburner for monitoring your CPU utilization while gaming. After you installed and set those applications, I want you to launch your favorite games that you play most frequently and notice that what is the ratio of your CPU and your GPU utilization. If your CPU is sitting at 100% utilization at every single time at every single game, but on the other hand your GPU is around 50 to 70%, that means your CPU is working much harder than your GPU. But before jumping the guns, I want you to try one thing. Increase your graphics preset and graphics resolution. And after doing that, if you notice that your CPU and GPU resolution is around the same, your CPU is sitting at 100% and your GPU is 80 to 100%, then you're all good. You might not need to upgrade your CPU. You need to buy a monitor which has much better, more resolution. Like if you're using 1080p, upgrade to a 1440p, or increase your graphics preset according to your FPS need. But after increasing your graphics quality or resolution, you see that you're not getting enough FPS, your gameplay is very choppy and laggy, well, then your GPU is not up to the mark. And it's a completely different story now. Now you need to upgrade your CPU because your GPU is powerful up to the point, but your CPU is not as powerful as your GPU. It's a very weird thing to say, but I hope you understood. Now, as I said earlier, for a lot of people, upgrading a CPU can be very simple. Buy a CPU, install it on your motherboard. At most, you might need to update your BIOS, specifically if you are using modern AMD CPUs, the Ryzen lineup. But for a lot of people who are using older AMD CPUs or Intel CPUs, the story is very much different. You might need to upgrade your motherboard. If you're in AM4 platform for AMD and you want to switch to AM5 platform, you not only need to buy a new CPU, you also need to buy a new motherboard. And AM5 platform doesn't run or DDR4 memory. Now you need to buy new memory kit. Now when it comes to motherboard, most of the time, if your motherboard is not broken, you don't need to buy a new one. You really don't need all the fancy features. If you think that you need RGB on your motherboard, to be honest, you really don't need. If you think that you need fancy features, very expensive VRM on your motherboards, and you're not even gonna try to tinker with your hardware, like push it to its limit, you don't need a new and fancy motherboard. Now let's talk about RAM. In day-to-day usage, like the most of the stuff you do, forget about gaming. If you see that your RAM utilization is reaching 80 to 90%, that means you are reaching the ceiling of your PC's resource. Adding a little bit more RAM can go a long way. But if you see while in your day-to-day usage, your RAM utilization is not crossing the 60 to 70% mark, then at least right now, you don't need to upgrade your RAM. But storage is completely a different thing. If you have a mechanical hard drive on your PC in 2025, dude, no matter what, upgrade it to a SSD. Now, SSD comes in two forms and two types. One is a M.2 form factor, which directly connects to your motherboard, and another is a 2.5-inch bay type of form factor, which connects to your motherboard via SATA cable to your motherboard's SATA port. Now, M.2 style SSDs can use both SATA interface and PCIe interface. SATA is slower, PCIe is faster, but both of them are much faster than a mechanical drive. And one more tip here, buy little bit more than what you need. If you think that right now you just only need 1 terabyte of storage, but later you might need a little bit more. So you think, well, whenever I'm gonna needing it, I'm gonna buy it. But here's the thing, if you saturate all of your motherboard's SATA port or PCIe ports, what's gonna end up happening is that the bandwidth that those storage needs, or the PCIe lanes that those storage devices needs, your motherboard chipset will pull that out from your GPU's PCIe resources. So what end up gonna happening, you might end up starving your GPU from its resources. So always buy a little bit more than what you need. Now let's talk power supply. Again, same, if it is not broken, you don't need to upgrade it, unless and until you are adding some new hardware to your PC and your power supply doesn't have the enough power requirement, or your power supply isn't powerful enough. If your complete power budget of your PC is over 550 watts and you have a 500 watts of power supply, then you need to buy a new one. And while talking about power supply, here's something that I'm gonna suggest you: buy power supply from name brands. Don't buy cheap power supply because, hey, it's 700 watts, but it doesn't cost as much as EVGA's one, so why would I buy EVGA? It's the same thing, it delivers the power. Trust me, it doesn't. You can run into some serious trouble. Buy power supply from name brands like Corsair, EVGA, Cooler Masters. Also leave 50 to 100 watts of headroom. If your PC's power requirement is around 500 to 600, then you should buy a power supply of 700 or 800. Also, look for a power supply with 80 plus certification. Now, it doesn't have to be 80 plus titanium. Gold will serve you fine. Now, lastly, let's talk about cabinets or case fans and coolers, CPU coolers. Starting with cabinet, if your cabinet is not rusty and you're happy with it, why even you're thinking about upgrading it? It's working fine, right? But if it's rusty or you don't like it, go ahead, do it. Case fans, same thing. If it's working fine, why? Unless and until it's broken or you want RGB, then okay, you can. Now, talking about coolers, if you see that your CPU temps are always high, here's something that I'm gonna suggest you first. Clean your PC. Do it. It can make a lot of difference. Trust me, cleaning your PC can give you a substantial amount of difference. If you never changed your thermal paste and you bought your PC 5 years ago, watch some YouTube videos how to open an air cooler or a AIO, whatever you might have. Buy a thermal paste. They don't cost that much lesser than buying a new cooler, and reapply that paste. Now, I've gone through all the parts and everything, but I haven't talked about GPU, right? So let's talk about that. The reason why you are watching the video in the first place. It's also very simple. The games that you play most of the time or you're planning to play is playable on your GPU, then you don't need to upgrade your GPU. Now, playable can be defined differently depending on different people. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a 1080p monitor and its refresh rate is 120 Hz, well, the least amount of FPS you should reach for is 120 FPS on average in 1080p resolution at, well, the graphics settings that you desire. Mostly everybody wants ultra, but not every single time you need ultra. If at high or a combination of high and medium preset, you are getting 120 FPS in 1080p, then you are fine. Same goes for 1440p and 4K. But if you are not getting the amount of FPS that your monitor's refresh rate has, wow, my English is so bad. Like, I should take grammar classes, but I digress. So what I was like, yeah, your monitor's refresh rate and your FPS, if there is a lot of disparity, then you should upgrade your GPU. If you don't have a lot of disparity, you really shouldn't, because if you buy a beefy enough GPU which is capable of 1440p gaming, but you have a 1080p monitor, well, you gonna waste a lot of money because the GPU isn't working how it's supposed to be. But all the things that I said are about how you will identify when you need to upgrade. But how will you identify when you need to build a new PC? Simple. If you need more RAM, you don't need to build a new PC. If you need cooling, you don't need to build a new PC. If you need a new powerful CPU, but it's a drop-in solution, you don't need a new PC. Unless to upgrade to that new CPU, you need to upgrade your RAM, you need to upgrade your motherboard, or also you might need to upgrade your power supply. Then you are changing a substantial amount of your PC. At that point, you should build a new one. When it comes to your GPU, if you are upgrading your GPU and it needs more power, then okay, get a power supply, get a new GPU. But if you're upgrading your GPU, which is more powerful, but also your CPU isn't able to keep up with it, so now you have to upgrade your CPU, you have to upgrade your GPU. Well, as you can see, you are essentially building a new PC. I hope it cleared every single question that you might have before watching this video. If it didn't, I'm sorry. Let me know in the comment section. I will reach out to you and answer all of your questions. And I'm sorry for the countless amount of grammatical mistakes I made. I don't know what's going on with my head today. I'm sorry, but if you like the video, hit the like button. If you haven't, feel free to dislike. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, well, do it by here. And if you want to watch more videos from us, check out this video right here. And there's Akash, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.